So starting today's news, coach Javier Mendez has shared footage of Ali Abdelaziz sparring Islam Makhachev in preparation for Islam's fight with Dustin Poirier. Now this is pretty funny because Ali Abdelaziz actually has a talent for emulating fighter styles, and some of his movements literally do look like Dustin Poirier.
Sparring partner, Ali.
Now, a funny thing about this is Ali Abdelaziz does actually have a talent for emulating fight styles, and prior to Islam Makhachev's fight against Bobby Green, Ali also posted another video imitating Bobby Green's fight style. Check this out. Now this is pretty funny, man, and it did actually resemble Bobby Green, to be honest. And what I think Ali and Islam Makhachev and Team Khabib do, when they have an opponent scheduled, they literally all sit round watching this person's fights, and just as a joke they start imitating their opponent's fight style. So when they all get to the gym, literally every team member can emulate this fighter's style, which does actually make for good preparation for the teammate of whoever's fighting this particular opponent. But it is quite funny, man. Ali Abdelaziz does actually have a talent for emulating fighter styles, which I think is pretty funny, but it also makes for good preparation. For the next story, legal documents have been released confirming UFC owners are planning to remove Dana White from his position at the UFC. Former UFC heavyweight Mark Hunt has also released documents implying that his lawsuit against Dana White is the reason Dana is being fired by the UFC. So just to give some clarity on this, Mark Hunt actually has an active lawsuit against Dana White, which was filed on May 10th. Mark Hunt's lawsuit actually relates to UFC 200 when he fought Brock Lesnar. At the event, Brock Lesnar won. After the fight, Brock Lesnar tested positive for PEDs, so the fight was overturned. Now what Mark Hunt is implying is that Dana White and the UFC knew Brock Lesnar was on PEDs when he fought Mark Hunt at UFC 200, and this is the whole reason for Mark Hunt's new lawsuit against Dana White and the former UFC owners. So yesterday on Twitter, Mark actually posted this legal document saying, "Dana White, get your CV ready, bitch." Now this document posted by Mark Hunt relates to the UFC owners' Q1 loss of $249 million and how they plan to minimize financial and legal risks in the future. TKO's Q1 loss was largely due to the antitrust lawsuit and $335 million settlement. Now this document posted by Mark Hunt is basically implying that the UFC owners are planning to get rid of Dana White because of Mark Hunt's lawsuit. So just outlined in red here, the document says these forward-looking statements speak only as of the date of this quarterly report and are subject to a number of known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and assumptions, including but not limited to. Now this section here, it basically states what the UFC owners are looking out for and what they consider risks towards the company. And it says here the unfavorable outcome of legal proceedings that may be instituted against TKO Group Holdings, UFC, WWE, and their affiliates in connection with the transactions, including the business combination. And then this part here, it says the inability to retain WWE or UFC management, employees, and/or talent. Now what this document implies is that if any lawsuits are brought against TKO Group Holdings, the UFC, or anybody related to the company, this may cause their inability to retain WWE or UFC management, employees, or talent. In layman's terms, this may cause an inability to keep employees or associates related to any lawsuit that could affect the company. And Mark Hunt has posted this because obviously Mark Hunt has a brand new lawsuit against the UFC. So what Mark Hunt is implying is that his lawsuit is basically affecting Dana White's status within the UFC, and the UFC owners may be letting go of Dana White because of Mark Hunt's brand new lawsuit against Dana White and the UFC. Now it doesn't stop there, because back in December, emails were leaked by WME IMG executive Brent Smith confirming that the UFC owners are planning to remove Dana White from his position at the UFC due to financial and legal legal risks within the company. Now, these documents basically outline how the UFC owners plan to mitigate financial and legal risks against the company in several different areas. And the actual email sent by Brent Smith actually outlines the risks that the company are looking out for. One of them is fighter lawsuit. Another one is injury, death, CTE, etc. Pay-per-view volatility. Another risk is best fighters go the way of boxing, individual promotion and pay-per-view. But another risk they had on the agenda was Dana White, and it literally says here in black and white, outlined in red, key man Dana White needs to develop a retention, transition, and ultimately replacement for Dana White. So this isn't clickbait, this is literally in black and white. The UFC owners have a list of risks and mitigants they want to avoid, and it clearly says here they have a plan to replace Dana White due to legal and financial risks within the company. Now, this new lawsuit against Dana White from Mark Hunt, a lot of people may just overlook it and they may think it's just clickbait and it's not actually going to go ahead and nothing will come of it. You need to understand that this lawsuit was filed on the 10th of May. Now, this has been going on for the past 8 years, this legal battle between Mark Hunt and Dana White and the former UFC owners. The fact that this lawsuit has actually been filed suggests that it has been accepted by the courts and it is going to go forward. And Mark Hunt also says there is damning evidence against Dana White and the former UFC owners. According to him, there are sealed documents which contain text messages between Dana White, Brock Lesnar, and the former UFC owners. And according to him, these documents are going to be unsealed. This case is going to be taken to court, and he believes that Dana White is going to be found guilty and removed from his position at the UFC. So I don't know what to make of this whole situation at the moment. As we know, lawsuits can take years, but Mark Hunt is pretty confident that this is going forward and he will be victorious. Now, obviously, I don't know the legal ins and outs of Mark Hunt's lawsuit against the UFC, but what I do know is the UFC owners have concerns about Mark Hunt's lawsuit against Dana White. For the final story, Colby Covington refuses Ian Gary fight and calls out Belal Muhammad. Now, recently in an interview with Submission Radio, Colby Covington finally responded to Ian Gary's call out and said he is not interested in fighting Ian Gary because Ian hasn't done enough in the UFC to deserve a fight against him. Colby said the only fights he's interested in at the moment is a fight against Charles Oliveira at welterweight or a fight against the #1 contender, Belal Muhammad. So in response to Ian Gary's call out, Colby went on to say he's coming off a split decision against the boss boy Jeff Neal, the kid serving bloomin' onions over at Outback Steakhouse. He's not even a full-time fighter. You're coming off a split decision over that guy and you're trying to act like you call the shots and I'll do as I'm told? No, kid, you'll do as you're told and you'll go sit there in a corner because you're Conor McGregor. Colby went on to say nobody cares about the kid. He's irrelevant. He doesn't have any high-profile wins. He does nothing for my career. Why would I fight a guy like this? If I go out there and beat this guy, everybody's just going to be like, oh, he's a freaking nobody. And talking about fighting Belal Muhammad, Colby went on to say, I would like to fight Belal. He's talked a lot of smack. Now he's squatting on his ranking. He should have to come out and fight. I think we should fight. I think that's the fight that should be next. He doesn't deserve a title fight. How long has he sat out? He sat out for over a year. So I'm going to be completely honest here. I don't want to hate on Colby Covington because I respect all fighters, but if you look at his actual record, in the last 4 years, he's fought once a year in the last 4 years. So to criticize Belal for sitting on his ranking is pretty hypocritical. And in terms of the fight itself, if I was Belal Muhammad, I would completely ignore Colby Covington and wouldn't respond to this call out because Belal was calling out Colby for years and Colby wouldn't accept the fight despite Belal being a highly ranked fighter. Now Belal is on the cusp of a title shot, is on the cusp of realizing his title dreams. Colby is now jumping out of the woodwork and trying to snatch a fight against Belal and just make himself relevant. If I was Belal, I'd just completely ignore this call out. I wouldn't respond, I wouldn't acknowledge it whatsoever. Because if Belal responds to Colby's call out, I can literally see it backfiring and the UFC using it as an excuse to take Belal's title shot away and instead booking a fight between Belal Muhammad and Colby Covington, which doesn't make sense whatsoever. So if I was Belal Muhammad, I would completely ignore this call out, stay focused on a fight with Leon Edwards, which is probably going to happen at UFC 304 in Manchester. And Colby Covington, I'm not sure who he should fight, but he definitely shouldn't be fighting Belal Muhammad. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.